Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an all-new reaction and review. Tonight, guys, I am continuing the countdown to episode 400 by checking out the movie that came in third place. It is a Japanese monster movie from 1993. That movie is Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. Now, I have to say, guys, I have been a fan of this franchise almost my entire life. And out of the 30 films in this series, I have seen 28 of them. This one is one of only two I have never seen. And I really don't know a whole lot about the plot outside of, like, the absolute basics, which is that in this film, Mechagodzilla is a weapon created by the Japanese government in order to stop Godzilla the next time he decides to rampage their, country, which sounds fine. It actually sounds really cool. I have no clue, though, if this thing here is going to be utilized well, because, once more, I've never had a chance to see any of this film. I am certainly hoping for it to be good, because I do know that this series is sometimes known for pumping out some absolute garbage. But the only way I'm going to find out if this thing is any good at all is if I shut up and I push play, and I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. So, wait a minute here. So Mechagodzilla's tech is coming from shit they salvaged from Mecha King Ghidorah from the previous film? Dude, that is fucking awesome. Did they just call him Rodan? No. That is fucking Rodan, goddammit. Who the fuck thought that it'd be a good idea to swap the O and the A in Rodan's name? That doesn't sound right at all, guys. You know, guys, I was always curious exactly where in the hell that little fucking baby, Godzilla came, from in the later films. And now I know, and it's friggin' like first, time out, it's kind of ugly, but also at the same time, it's kind of sort of cute. It's sort of weird like that. It really is. So, the scientists think that this baby god, Zillosaurus, is what called Godzilla to Kyoto. And now they want to try to hide the baby so that way Godzilla can't find it. Don't you think maybe if you give Godzilla the kid, perhaps maybe he'll go the fuck away? I honestly, guys, am just, making like a logical move here. But perhaps, honestly, he's looking for the closest thing he'll ever have to offspring. Let him have it, and he'll probably leave the fucking city in peace. Again, that, though, is just a theory. I could be totally fucking wrong, but why aren't they entertaining that option? Okay, and apparently Rodan is now powered up for reasons. It looked, guys, okay, now, and it looked really cool, guys. I kind of sort of liked how Rodan seems to be now, almost, made of fire, but I would kind of sort of like a reason as to why, because they usually are pretty good at least explaining why this sort of shit happens in these movies. Okay, guys, I really should mention this because it's really beginning to bother me more and more. Every time that they call him fucking Rodan, I cringe just slightly because it's fucking Rodan. The character had been in film at this point for probably a good, 25, 30 years? There is no fucking reason to absolutely botch the character's name that badly. And again, every time they fucking say it, I just cringe a little. It's just wrong. So Rodan has the power to heal now. That's certainly new. And Apparently he heals by sacrificing himself. Alright, well that... Still, when the hell did Rodan have any of these powers? I would really like to know. These movies are usually a hell of a lot better at, actually explaining new powers that some of these monsters get. All of this just feels incredibly weird and just out of place, I guess. Well, guys, that was Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. Let's shut that off. Okay. Where to start? Well, I was sort of thinking about something because I was complaining earlier as the movie was going about how they were essentially giving like Rodan powers that he never showed in any previous films. First of all, I also said that the character had only been around for about 20 to 20 or like 25, 30 years. I was way off. I actually looked it up as I was watching. The character, at least when this film was made, had been around for 37 years. But hey, at least I was, I guess, sort of close. And I also forgot about the fact that in 1984 they opted to reboot the entire franchise, rendering every single Godzilla film non-canon minus the first one. So technically, it was sort of okay for them to bring, or for them to give, Rodan powers that he never had before. It's just, I really think that the problem is that they have these powers manifest about halfway through with absolutely zero explanation as to why. And those powers are kind of far reaching, because it's like, okay, so now he's glowing red, he has heat breath, atomic heat, he has sort of like atomic fire breath, akin to what Godzilla has. Oh, and he can heal things now by going and giving of his energy and his life force, yada yada yada. Which were all brand new things that seemed kind of out of place. Wow, guys, I'm just talking about like a plot point. I haven't even talked about writing in general. But yeah, that one there was something I just sort of wanted to clear up. I also want to state that this right here isn't even writing, but this here is dubbing. Whatever company dubbed this thing decided to name him Radon, and I don't know why. It's Rodan. 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 Alright? Again, character had been around for 37 years. There's no way in hell you can fuck a name up that badly without doing it intentionally. But once more, I still haven't touched on writing. There's just so much like piddly shit, and it all has to do with the secondary fucking character. Holy crap. Alright, so why don't we talk about the writing here? Writing here is decent, but I do have to stress, if you have watched previous Godzilla films, this thing here is not really doing anything. It really isn't doing anything unique or special in terms of trying to come up with a whole new story. It honestly was just sort of trying to play along with the long running story arc that had been going since, I believe, Godzilla vs. Biollante, and they'd slowly been building up this proper canon. So you actually have characters who are coming back from previous films, and they actually play a rather sizable role. So if you've never seen if you haven't seen the films before this one, you may be a little bit lost. However, though, they also make a rather good effort at trying to keep people, caught up with things that happened in previous films that tie into this one, which has always been a strength of this series, is that they know that a lot of people are going to be coming in. They have no idea what the hell has been going on in past films. So if there's anything of value that carries over, they will totally make it a point to mention it in order to sort of keep even new viewers up to speed. So that is always awesome. And our story here, like I said, is good. It ultimately isn't anything special, but it is still good, especially if you're a fan of kaiju films, especially the Godzilla series, because it is everything you want from a film. Now, that also sort of leads to a problem of the fact that it is incredibly formulaic in terms of how the film is handled, but you see, that also is part of the entire series. And even fucking spin-offs have a real bad habit of sticking to this, formula, which is why a lot of people were not fans of last year's US film, because it stuck to the formula very, very well, and it really pissed off people. And that formula being, you focus on the human characters, and you give Godzilla as little screen time as possible, so that way when he shows up, it is just awesome. And that also happens here. So people who are really into just tons and tons and tons of kaiju action and giant monster action, you're not really going to get a whole lot of that. However, if you are a fan of the franchise, you kind of know that going in. So guys, writing here is certainly decent. Once more, it's nothing ultimately special, but it also isn't terrible. Acting. I decided to watch the dub of this because, personally, I have always watched the dubs of these movies, and that kind of goes back to the fact that when I watched them as a kid, I watched them dubbed, and it's just basically become like a habit. And the dubs for Godzilla movies sometimes have a habit of being just absolutely hysterically bad. Oftentimes it has to do with the fact that characters don't know how to properly pronounce names, and then that is why we get, in quite a few of them, in many of them, we have a fucking R affixed onto the end of Godzilla's name. I've never understood why, but it's just sort of what happens. So you get, stuff like that. Or you will have readings that are incredibly dead, or just ones that just don't fit the scene. Now, thankfully here, we don't have actors referring to our lead monster as God fucking Ziller. However, we do have, Rodan. So I guess it's kind of sort of a trade-up. They totally had to botch a fucking name somewhere, and apparently they really thought that Rodan was the one to screw with. Anyway... beyond that, though, the acting here is usually really solid. There are just a couple of scenes, though, where we have line readings that are just so lifeless that it actually makes the scene funny. At one point, we have footage of a fucking building clearing out, evacing because of the giant 400-foot scaly threat that's leveling the city. The person on the PA announcing that everyone has to evacuate the building. He sounds so bored with it. It's like, evacuate the building. There's no feeling to it. And it makes that scene kind of funny, which is strange because the scene isn't supposed to be funny. But that happens a lot here, where you'll have actors who almost sound as if they are reading their lines for the very first time, and that was the take that they opted to go with. And it kind of sort of makes scenes, funny, which is kind of sad when the scenes, especially when the scenes are trying to be serious. However, though, it still works, especially if you just have a like for cheesy, dubbing, then this thing here is going to be perfect for you. However, though, a very large portion of the acting here in terms of the dub are very, very well, done. So I honestly, guys, am not able to complain much. It's just there really are like a couple of line readings. I mean, there's literally maybe like a dozen poorly given lines here. and all of them are probably going to be the funniest thing you will hear all frickin' day, because they are just that lifeless or that, wooden. So guys, acting here in terms of the dub are rather solid. Special effects. One thing which this series has always prided itself on is some awesome special effects, and this thing has some amazing looking stuff. But there is a problem with taking these films and dumping them onto Blu-ray, and that is when you take the film and you clean it up and you put it in high definition. When characters are flying, especially in close-up shots, the wires that they are hanging from is very noticeable. And this is especially noticeable in the first fight between Godzilla and Rodan, where you will have like close-up shots and you can see the fishing line, which is holding up Rodan. Now, mind you, that honestly, guys, is nothing big, because I was kind of sort of expecting that since this is a Blu-ray and they had to clean it up. I was totally expecting that, but I know some people won't be, and some people are going to see it as a sign of real cheapness. Now, mind you, that honestly is the only time that I personally noticed like wires or string. So that honestly is saying a lot, since we have a whole lot of flying creatures in this. Well, we have lots of flying shots, and there's maybe like one or two of them in one scene where you can see the wires. So they honestly were able to cover them up well, even when they jump to HD. So that is fantastic. Everything else in terms of special effects, guys, is almost all suit work, and the suit work here is fantastic. However, that also is something which should be fucking expected from this series, because even, guys, the bad movies in this series at least have decent suits, and they at least have decent suit work. So yeah, guys, special effects here are really decent, and everything else which isn't like suits or flying props or like buildings and everything is all basically just your typical fucking like digital shit which they put into all these films. Lasers and fire breath and all of that fun stuff, and all of that looks fine, because a lot of it looks as if it may have very well been recycled from one of the previous films, which is totally fine. I have no issue with that. And speaking of recycling stuff, music. This thing, guys, has fantastic music, but that honestly is for two reasons. One, they honestly have used almost the very same score for almost every Godzilla movie made, and that score is amazing, and they very rarely made new pieces. This has almost nothing new in it in terms of music, so everything here is classic and it's awesome. And that's also because the person who made the music, I believe it was Akira Ifukube, knows what he's doing in terms of making music, and everything he touches turns to fucking gold in terms of music. So guys, score here is amazing. Our sound mix is really good, but I do have to make a mention in terms of sound mix, because there are a handful of characters in this film who speak English. And for whatever reason, their dialogue isn't lined up with their mouth movement, which looks really out of place. I have no problem, guys, seeing fucking actors who are speaking in Japanese and are dubbed over in English, and the mouths don't match. I am kind of used to that. But when a character is speaking English and you're either dubbing them over or you are putting their dialogue back in and it's off by like a tenth of a second, it looks off. It looks weird and it pulls you right out of the fucking film. And that is exactly what happened here with the all of like 2 or 3 characters who natively spoke English. Anyway, so we do have that. That honestly is going to be like a minor issue to some people. Lighting here, guys, is really good, and the sets look awesome. Ultimately, guys, am I able to recommend Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2? Oh, most certainly, especially if you are a fan of the, franchise. It is certainly good. Mind you, it honestly is not one of the best, but it is totally worth fucking watching. It is totally worth, checking out. The plus side is, if you go out and you buy this thing on Blu-ray, it also comes bundled with Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, which is also a fantastic movie, if not ultimately incredibly formulaic. But it is still really, really good. Now, guys, actually, I'm going to go watch Godzilla vs. Space, Godzilla, and I'm probably going to marathon the rest of my Godzilla Blu-rays over the next day, possibly two, because I am totally in the mood to watch more of these, because god damn it, this is still my favorite film franchise of all time. Anyway, guys, with that, we come to the close of another reaction and review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Base.